Game shows. Time to sit back, play along, and root for the contestants as they try to win big money for answering some questions or maybe just guessing right. But some game shows make critical mistakes or get played by unscrupulous contestants. Here are the 10 biggest game show scandals of all time. Number 10. A costly second chance. It was 2001, and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire was one of the hottest shows in America. The Regis Philbin-hosted quiz show aired multiple nights a week and spawned spin-offs around the world. And now it was time for Austin's Ed Toutant to sit in the hot seat. The contestant answered his first 8 questions correctly, but on his second, he was asked which vegetable had been genetically engineered to glow by English scientists. He guessed tomato. The answer was potato, and his run was over with a measly $1,000 in his pocket. But there was a wrinkle to come in the story. Ed did some research after the show and found that the potato experiment was done in Scotland, not England, and there were tomato experiments going on in England. The show had screwed up, and they decided to bring him back to continue his run 7 months later. Because the show's prize grew for every episode, without a $1 million winner, he was playing for more money this time. And Toutant proceeded to breeze through the next 6 questions, winning the grand prize on a question about the first use of commercial aerosol cans. Ed Toutant won $1,860,000, and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire escaped with their reputation intact, if not their pocketbook. It wouldn't be the only time a popular game show made a controversial call. Number 9. Southern Screw-Up. Wheel of Fortune has been on the air since 1975, and the wheel-spinning word-guessing game of chance is a popular low-stakes game show. But for Renee Durrett, one puzzle would kick off a major controversy. The Florida woman was doing well, and she was ready to guess a Christmas-themed puzzle. She proudly blurted out 7 swans a-swimmin' to answer and was told she was wrong. Another contestant quickly guessed 7 swans a-swimming and got the money, and Durrett went on to lose the game. To say Southerners were mad was putting it lightly. The rules of Wheel of Fortune say the puzzle answer has to be repeated exactly, and other contestants have lost on minor errors like accidentally adding or omitting the word "and." But while Durrett accepted her losses gracefully, others said it was actually discrimination, and they argued that her answer didn't deliberately omit the G and it was an involuntary product of her Southern accent. The show stuck by its rules, nothing came of the controversy, and the wheel continues to give away its prizes, but they're probably happy they don't film down south. But few game show screw-ups involved this much money, literally. Number 8. Down the Tubes. The success of Millionaire meant every network wanted their own quiz show hit, and some added bizarre twists. That was the case with $1 Million Money Drop, a Fox show where you literally started holding the $1 million in your hands, and you had to bet on every answer by putting money on what you thought was the right answer, and anything on a wrong answer would be dropped down a massive chute, never to be seen again. Contestants kept anything they had left at the end of the game. But for one couple, a bad question saw their fortune flushed away. Gabe and Brittany were faced with a tricky question about what was sold first, Walkman or Post-it notes. They argued, and Gabe insisted it was Post-it notes. They put $800,000 on Post-it notes and watched as it disappeared down the tubes. But after the show, research indicated that Post-it notes were briefly sold first in limited cities. Gabe was right. At first, the producers tried to claim that the fine print meant that they were in the clear, and the couple lost all their remaining money on the next question anyway. But public outrage forced them to invite the couple back on the show for another chance. But that wouldn't happen because the show was quickly canceled. And with such a great research team, too. This next controversy was so big you never even got to see it. Number 7. Child's Play. Mark Burnett is the king of reality TV, the man behind hits like Survivor and The Apprentice. He wanted to get in on the quiz show game, but his version had a twist. It would star kids. Our little genius would have kids answering questions with their parents deciding whether they would continue or walk away with the money they had. It was scheduled to premiere in January 2010, but less than a week before it aired, the show was pulled from the schedule and would never be seen again. Why? A tidal wave of controversy was about to follow. It turned out that Burnett had pulled the plug himself after many reports about the integrity of the series. Contestants were reportedly getting advance information on the answers before taping, and production was stopped when contestants didn't seem to know the answers. There were even reports that contestants were guaranteed a certain amount of money. Amid the controversy, the FCC briefly planned to investigate the series, the first time this would happen to a game show since the 1950s. But when the show was pulled, the controversy faded away and the investigation with it. But it's not always the show that causes the controversy. Sometimes it's the contestant. Number 6. The opposite of laying low. The game show Super Password was a revival of the popular 1960s show where contestants were paired with celebrities and had to guess a word using only one-word clues. And the record setter on the new version was a man named Patrick Quinn, who had stunned audiences by winning a massive $58,000 during his 2 days on the show. But he was about to make the news in a very different way. When Quinn showed up at the studio to collect his prize money, he was greeted by law enforcement there to arrest him. Turned out, Patrick Quinn was not Patrick Quinn at all. He was actually Kerry D. Ketchum, a notorious con artist with an outstanding fraud warrant in Alaska and Indiana. His most notorious crime? An elaborate scheme to fake his wife's death to collect a $100,000 insurance policy. He was a wanted man, which makes his decision to appear on nationally broadcasted game shows all the more puzzling. In the end, Ketchum was sentenced to 5 years in prison in order to pay restitution to the insurance company, and to add insult to injury, his prize money was rescinded because he deceived the show about his eligibility. But he wasn't the most notorious criminal to appear on a game show. Number 5. Target acquired. It was 1989, and one of the most popular game shows on ITV in Britain was Bullseye, combining a quiz game with a dart game, and it was known for its large bull mascot and its comic gameplay. A contestant named John Cooper appeared on the show and largely escaped attention, and at the same time, a horrible streak of crimes were terrorizing Wales. Robberies, violent assaults, arsons, burglaries, and murders. All the police had to go on was witness descriptions and a sketch. But they also had footage of the killer. They just didn't know it yet. When Peter and Gwenda Dixon were brutally murdered only a month after Cooper's stint on the game show, police were able to use the sketch and footage of Cooper's appearance to tie him to the crimes. They arrested him, and he was eventually sentenced to life in prison. While the TV show Bullseye would always have a dark mark on its history for having a serial killer as a contestant, it was also now one of the only game shows in history to help end a crime spree. Few scandals get more attention than when a contestant figures out how to beat the system. Number 4. The Price is actually right? Most kids have fond memories of watching The Price is Right when home sick from school, and the price guessing game has been part of American life for decades. Contestants take a stab at the price of items for sale, and the closest gets the chance to win the big prizes. It's pretty rare to get an exact sum even in the preliminary game, and everyone was surprised when Terry Kinese nailed the price of a smoker grill combo. But it shocked everyone even more when he guessed the price of the grand prize showcase to the dollar, $23,743. Did Kerry Kinese cheat The Price is Right? Host Drew Carey assumed the episode would never air because Kinese had obviously cheated, but it turns out that Kinese and his wife were super fans of the show. Many prizes repeated themselves over the course of the show, and Terry and Linda kept track of them and memorized them. They even had the help of Ted Slauson, another superfan, who tried to use the same system. A combination of memory and some signals from Linda in the audience helped Terry remember the right answer. Is this cheating? No one can say for sure, but Terry insisted he was just well prepared. But he wasn't the only game show contestant with a lot of prep time. Number 3. No Whammy. Press Your Luck, a hit game show of the 1980s, has a quiz show element, but it was most known for its big board. A quick-moving board where contestants pressed a button to lock in on money and prizes, while trying to avoid the Whammy, a cartoon critter that took away all your money. It had a lot of fans, but few bigger than Michael Larson, who watched the show faithfully. When he got to appear on it in 1984, he proceeded to put that knowledge to use and won a staggering $110,236, the biggest one-day total ever won on a game show at that point. But there was a secret to Larson's success. How did Larson do so well and avoid hitting whammies while racking up the money? Producers started panicking when it was ongoing and looked for how he could be cheating, but it turned out that Larson had simply memorized the board's patterns. In a similar system to counting cards, he had observed the board and knew when to press the button. He was so confident he would even celebrate a split second before the prize was revealed. At first, the producers refused to pay him, claiming he had defrauded them, but their lawyers told them that Larson hadn't broken any rules. The show quickly fixed the board to eliminate these patterns, and Larson went on to become a celebrity. But there's a fine line between smart gameplay and a serious crime. Number 2. Cough cough. Have you ever been behind someone in a movie or show and they just won't stop coughing? Imagine having to deal with that while trying to watch someone's stunning million-pound run on the British version of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Major Charles Ingram won it all in 2001, but producers soon picked up that something was unusual. Ingram's wife in the audience, as well as another contestant, Tequin Whittock, seemed to cough at unusual times right before Ingram would answer questions. It wasn't long before the police got involved. All three were accused of cheating, and soon they were indicted and convicted of procuring execution of a valuable security by deception. They were all given suspended sentences and fined, and Ingram was ordered to resign his commission as a major, while their convictions were upheld, despite Whittock claiming to have a chronic cough. It hasn't hurt Ingram's career. He went on to write 2 novels and appeared on other game shows, but as for the £1 million, it was quickly rescinded by the show. But one scandal nearly took down an entire genre of entertainment. Number 1. 21 and Done. 21 was one of the most popular game shows in America in the 50s, featuring 2 contestants in isolation booths competing against each other to earn points. It was dominated by Herb Stempel, but the show was struggling in the ratings. The producers wanted to jazz it up, and they got what they wanted when Stempel was dethroned by Charles Van Doren, a charming contestant who quickly became one of the first game show superstars and got people talking about 21. But it was all a lie. A year after Stempel's defeat, he told the reporter that he had often been given the correct answers, and he was later told to let Van Doren defeat him to take over as champion. While Stempel was initially assumed to be a sore loser, reports soon came out that other shows like The Big Surprise and Dotto were fixed as well. Congress convened an investigation. Van Doren was summoned to testify and admitted that the show was rigged. This led Congress amending the Communications Act to prohibit the fixing of quiz shows, but the damage was done, and it would be a long time before American game shows regained its reputation. The scandal was so big, it became an Oscar-nominated movie named Quiz Show in the 1990s. For one of the largest scams in history, check out The Man Who Stole $65 Billion, the largest Ponzi scheme in history, Bernie Madoff. Or watch How Man Won Crazy Money by Hacking a Game Show for an in-depth look at Michael Larson's run.